In Alberta, we are home to some tremendous native grasslands. They're some of the most endangered ecosystems in the world. People love to live, work, and play, and have done so since time immemorial. They provide us with filtered water, habitat for wildlife that people depend on for food and sustenance, as well as grazing for livestock and a huge ranching industry. It's really a tremendous ecosystem that sequesters carbon and provides an incredible buffer. They're incredibly resistant to drought. And all of that is something that has attracted people to this area for many, many years. So with all these competing pressures of essentially our love for the grassland, it's made it very challenging to sustain them. So that is part of the work that the Alberta Prairie Conservation Forum wanted to do, was how much grassland of our native grasslands and parklands do we have left? And it's really important if you're having land use decisions, because for a variety of reasons these grasslands provide value to Albertans. So if we have a better understanding of what we have, where it is, and potentially where are we experiencing losses to native grassland, I think that's really critical to have that understanding. As well, another reason why the Alberta Prairie Conservation Forum undertook this State of the Prairie project was there's a lot of data on grasslands for a variety of uses, for different programs. Sometimes it was only for a few years. So there was not a lot of comparable information, especially that encompassed the entire grassland and parkland natural regions. So we wanted to be able to have information on grasslands and their extent for everyone to be able to use for land use decisions. So essentially we'd all be singing off the same song sheet. We'd have an ability to compare and be able to use that in our land use decisions, in our farming and ranching decisions, zoning, all those types of things, and especially for wildlife habitat conservation. We all love to live, work, and play on the grasslands, so being able to do it in an informed way and an integrated way is really going to be helpful to ensure the legacy of the grasslands continue.
The lands that the Municipal District of Taber have acquired over the years are substantial in many ways. Most importantly, I guess, though, those lands were used for grazing historically through grazing leases with the province of Alberta, and those lands make up critical units for the farming and ranching industry in the MD of Taber. Much of that land has come to the MD of Taber through traditional tax forfeiture processes over this last several decades. In the 1920s and 30s, in the era of the Dust Bowl, unfortunately, many landowners weren't successful on the land doing what they wanted to do. Through poor commodity prices, poor farming practices, and extended periods of drought, the people just could not afford to pay their municipal taxes, and therefore the land would come back to the MD. In the last 10 years or so, the MD of Taber has acquired from the province approximately 60,000 acres of primarily native grasslands. Unlike many municipalities in Alberta that have received similar lands, maybe not to the same degree that the MD of Taber did, they chose to sell those lands to the leaseholders. But I think wisely the MD of Taber made the choice to retain those lands for a number of reasons. I believe primarily for the purpose of the ecological integrity of those lands and what they provide and what they possess for not only cattle for grazing, but also for the environmental attributes that they have. The MD of Taber have instituted a number of protective measures for these lands to safeguard them from undesirable environmental effects and outcomes. In addition to the conservative grazing terms that these leases allow, in 2014, the MD of Taber Council approved and passed a prairie conservation bylaw, which added additional protections to these lands.
As a rangeland agrologist, I oversee the management of public lands within the special areas. So That can entail anything from setting carrying capacities that the land's properly leased out to grazing leaseholders, develop sustainable ranch and grazing practices on native grassland, oversee industry's use on native grassland so that they're following best management practices and guidelines that the land is, the impacts minimized on the landscape, and help manage a large land base of community pasture lands. Within the boundaries of special areas, there's approximately 2.5 million acres of public land that the board manages through multiple use of grazing leases, cultivation leases, community pastures, and then overlapping industrial activity on that land. The native grasslands in the special areas are important as they really are the backbone of the agricultural community, in a sense that these lands here are in a drought-prone area with very difficult soils to manage. So cultivation wasn't sustainable in the early 1900s, or at least the farming practices with cultivation at that time. And the native grasslands are, I guess, sustain the farming ranching operation by providing cattle grazing to a lot of the local farm ranch units in the area. I think as the pressures of converging native grassland to other land uses just starts to fragment the landscape, and we may see species not be able to move through the landscape as well, or find suitable habitat that is far enough away from other anthropogenic disturbances that they're going to be able to withstand that disturbance and survive. So we do recognize that the revenues and the activity that's occurring on these landscapes does benefit the overall larger municipal picture and provincial economy. However, there needs to be a way to balance that demand on the landscape with keep maintaining the integrity of the native rangelands. So developing minimum disturbance policy and practices to see that that's done right is something that the Special Areas Board has been very proud of.